Good morning, everybody, and welcome to TLC Live as every Wednesday. Today with my dear friend Bobby Everett.
Yeah, it's great to be
Bobby,
back.
thank you so much for being here
I love it. Thanks
and
for having me.
and filling up for Orlando Sanchez that he is still having fun
Yeah,
in the mountains over
I
there in
know, right?
Montana.
Yeah.
But he's with us today.
Right. He's with us, and he's definitely going to show his mountain
Yeah, I
background.
know
And
his
I know
beautiful
I'm jealous.
background.
I
That
want to
it
go to
looks
be
it
over
looks
there.
like a picture, but it's not. It's real.
Right.
Hello,
Exactly.
Orlando.
See, look at that.
Look at
Greetings,
you.
greetings.
Hey, we
Hey,
wanna be like you, as all your friends say. We wanna be like you when we grow up.
well, come on up. There's plenty of room.
Oh man, that looks gorgeous.
That looks beautiful. Well, Orlando is coming back. Thank God on Tuesday.
Hmm.
We're gonna have him in Houston again. So today it's been a week after the Uvalde tragedy, where 21 people die, 19 kids, two teachers, 17 others got injured. They're being in hospitals in San Antonio. They're being in hospitals around Uvalde. It's been a tragedy not only for Uvalde, for Texas, for the country, but for the entire world. Everybody is paying attention. Everybody has their eyes, their heart, and their soul in Uvalde. We're being even seen in Canada. They're taking actions on
That's
gun
right.
control. Governor Greg Abbott announced yesterday that Uvalde it's gonna be an emergency and a disaster area. We've been seeing a lot of things happening. The investigation. Now the parents have more questions than
Right.
answers. Unfortunately, not only the parents, the community, reporters being asking questions, and at this point, it's many things that is uncertain. We
Yeah,
don't know.
absolutely.
We don't know. I mean, we have a timeline, but it's been changing a lot of information as we speak.
Right. And it's weird a week later because at the beginning when this was happening, within hours and the next day there were press conferences and public statements. And what was unfortunate is a lot of that what was said was wrong. And they had to step back, and now I think they've gone into shutdown. You want to get the facts out, but you want to make sure that we do it in a timely manner so that people can rest assured, because these parents are grieving. They want answers, and it's just shocking a week later to see the how it all sinks in, and what we can do to prevent it in the future.
Correct. So we're going to talk about today not only about how lawmakers can trying to prevent this in the future, but also mental health. That is a big issue. How do we're going to deal with this right now and in the future with our kids? Right now they are in summer, but they're going to go back to school. The mayor of Uvalde was talking on the news this morning that the best thing to do is tear down that school and build a new one. But even though that if they're going to be build a new one, I'm not sure if these kids or the parents wants to
Right.
send them back to school. So this is it's a tragedy that we don't know at this point what is going to happen. That's why we're doing TLC Live today, dedicated to this topic, because it's still in our hearts. I mean, still in shock of everything that we've been living in this country and this tragedy. So we have three guests today. We have an honor to have our dear friend, also John Lujan. He's an elected official for Texas House of Representatives for District 118 back in San Antonio, that he is being in a very close communication and helping out the parents of many of the victims that they were taken to hospitals in San Antonio, and he's been helping them out. He's been on top of this situation, and of course, we're going to have his insights. Also, I'm going to have my glasses right now because we have Aristides Gonzalez. He is the CEO of Safe Choice for Kids, and he is a security professional with domestic and international experience, knowledge of standardization, of process simplification, team builder, and proven leader with expertise in security leadership strategies. He's going to talk about security today. Also, we have Dr. Julie Kaplow. He is the executive director of vice president of trauma and grief programs and policy of Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute. So they have been assisting not only in Uvalde tragedy, but they also assist in Santa Fe school shooting back in 2018. So security, mental health, and lawmakers, this is three very important points that we need to address after the Uvalde tragedy. So welcome the three of you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everything that you're been doing since this tragedy started on May 24. We're gonna start with you, John, that we've been talking on the phone since this happened, and you were telling me that you've been in close contact with many of the parents. You've been also in Uvalde and talking to the community and the victims' family.
Yeah, Andrea, of course, this is a tragedy hits home for all of us. All of us are touched some way by this, right? It's been very tragic, and I know a lot of people made a rush to Uvalde. I didn't. I stayed here. We put in our prayer group at the church, and you, as you know me, Andrea, I'm a man of faith, and man, my heart hurt, and I said, God, I don't want to go down there. I know they've got traffic and they've got all kinds of things. What can I do? And might call it chance. I know it's prayer. I got a call from a pastor that I'm on board with. Hope for the Hurting. And he called me and says, man, there's a family here. Right when it happened, he was airlifted immediately to San Antonio. It was a young boy, and he was shot in the shoulder. And I said, let's go, man. I said, but I don't want to do the state rep thing. I don't want to do all the picture taking. Let's just go and do like we would do in our ministry. What we do is we just wanted to immediately take some cash money for them so they can have money to spend for gas and this. And we know a lot of those folks are middle class folks just trying to make it, and that's what we did. And but through that, man, I got a bond with the father. He and I are good friends. I just talked to him yesterday. They just released him a couple of days ago to go back to Uvalde, and he'll be here this weekend for some therapy and stuff. And I live in South Bear County. I'm blessed. I have like a guest house even, and I told him that they can use that. He might be taking me up on that. But him and his wife are great people. And just to hear the story of his son, he had a lot of healing, years and years. His son was sitting next to the first person that got shot. His son witnessed his teacher get shot in the back and fall on the girl that was sitting next to him. He turned to run and got shot in his back, and he fell and just said he just shut his eyes crying and just wanted it to go away. And no 10-year-old should have to go through something like that. That's so tragic.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, I mean, what is the reaction that you're hearing from them and maybe other families? I mean, is it fear, anger, sadness? I mean, this has happened too much, and I know people are screaming for answers, but these first person reactions, what's hitting you the most?
What's hitting me the most is of course, everybody immediately, as a family, especially as a father. So I'm speaking mostly to the father, and we've become friends, talking almost daily. And his deal right now is just healing, right? His son, and he's actually kind of frustrated. He said, "There's way too many people in Uvalde right now, too much press." They're kind of at the point, like, man, give us space, give us room. But man, all the whys are there, and like you said, we don't have the answers. Bobby, I didn't get to say this, but good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah,
It's
it's
nice speaking with you. But the dad, you can tell as any father would, is just wants a healing for a son, and he's really worried about the long term. What I think is neat about a child is that he wouldn't say much to the dad. Every time he talked about it, he was always just saying there was a lot of blood, a lot of blood. But he said that when his 20-year-old son went in there, and they're closer, the 20-year-old and the 10-year-old, he said when this 20-year-old walked out of the room, he just broke down crying and said, Dad,
hmm
he should have never seen the things that he saw. And he shared with the brother, he shared with him more. He's the one, when I just described about his friend getting shot and the teacher, he shared all that with his brother. And it's terrifying. Think of the healing there's going to be a lot of mental healing that's going to need to be done. I don't know if you'll ever get over it. It's always going to play a part in your life. And
Right.
how that's mitigated, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so that's an interesting point that he brought up with talking to the brother and how these people, obviously that son wants to talk, loves his dad, but there's just some things that you need that different person to draw it out. And I can't imagine what this kid is going through, because we had the Santa Fe shootings, which we'll get to.
Correct.
But my son is 20, right? So he just graduated in 2020, so those were fresh on his mind. And when it was Santa Fe or another one, he came home that day with just a look of terror in his eyes. And this is down here in Fort Bend County, and he was perfectly safe at his school, but just the idea that it could happen is enough to strike fear in these kids. And this is happening right there in front of him. I can't imagine what he's going through.
Yeah. Well, so before we talk about politics with you and Orlando, because I want to address this in the political field also, but I wanna talk about the mental health, and I wanna call Dr. Julie Kaplow to talk about that. You guys been helping in Santa Fe shooting, and now you guys are in Uvalde. I wanted you to talk about these two different scenarios, and what we have learned from Santa Fe, and what is going on now in Uvalde, and what we can do after this.
Yes, all very good questions. I think even for all of us, just hearing about these stories about the kids has a significant impact on our own mental health, let alone the families who actually went through this. And, in the aftermath of the Santa Fe school shooting, we partnered with the Gulf Coast Center and Region 4 and the superintendent to stand up a resiliency center that would allow for a tiered model of care for children and families and teachers who were impacted. And what we mean by tiered model is that not every child who experiences what we would consider a traumatic event will necessarily go on to need treatment, but many of them will. And so the idea is that we really want to identify those kids that are going to need that higher level of care as quickly as possible and get them that treatment that they do need. I will say that one of the important lessons that we learned after Santa Fe is that, the traumatic stress and the post-traumatic stress that people experience will often go away more quickly than the grief. The grief reactions are always going to be there. So this is going to be, when we're talking about Uvalde, we're talking about a community that is going to be in mourning for years to come. And so, what we also want to do is prepare the community for what's to come, including thinking carefully about going back to school, how families are going to react to that. One of the things that we're advising on is thinking through, how to go back to school in a way that memorializes the children who died, but also acknowledges that we need to have a normal, healthy school environment for these kids that are coming back. And so one of the things we're doing is talking carefully about what are trauma and loss reminders? What are those things that are going to remind the kids of what happened? One really important one that we want people to look out for is 4th of July. So believe it or not, right after the Santa Fe school shooting, months later, there was a 4th of July celebration. And for any child or adult, really, who's been exposed to a shooting, the sound of the fireworks can be extremely triggering and set people back. And we actually saw a real influx of need right after the 4th of July. And so just thinking ahead about what are those things that are coming up that we need to be carefully preparing children and families for, and providing guidance for caregivers around how they can support their children.
And also, like for that community, the mayor of Uvalde was talking about to tear down the school, and because nobody can be able to walk into that school again, and building a new school. I don't know if that will be a solution, but at least it's something to start. But I think in the mental health field, how do you think that the school needs from now on? The parents also, because it's not just the kids, it's also us as a parents. Whether you live in that area or you don't live in that area, anyway, we're sending our kids to school, a place that we're supposed to have them safe and it's no longer.
Yes. So, that's something else that we've been really focused on, is helping to provide some guidance to parents across the country in how they can help their children to feel less anxious as they return to school. One of the most important things we can do as caregivers is sort of reestablish that sense of safety and security. So, helping children to understand that the adults around them are doing everything they can to keep them safe, to help them understand what are the things in their environment that they do control. So oftentimes when children even hear about something like this, it can change their worldview. It can make them feel like the world around them is out of control, that the world is a dangerous place. But reassuring them about the things that are keeping them safe, or the people in their lives who are there to look out for them, can be helpful. I would also say, when addressing questions or concerns that kids have about the shooting, we always want the caregivers to allow the child to guide the conversation. And what we mean by that is that sometimes parents err on the side of giving too much information and too many details, which can be overwhelming to kids, or they don't talk about it at all, thinking that the child may not have heard about it or trying to protect them. And that sends the message that this is too scary to think about or talk about. So what we tell parents to do is really to say something like, I know that you've probably heard about the terrible thing that happened in Uvalde. What questions do you have for me? And letting the child really guide that conversation, giving them sort of what they need to know, but not overwhelming them. I would also say supervision is important with regard to the media. So we know even for ourselves, for adults, seeing these things replayed over and over on the TV can be extremely anxiety provoking. So really watching what the kids are watching, turning off the TV, and answering any questions that they might have. And then the final thing I'll say is that it is so imperative that parents and caregivers get the support they need. If a parent is overwhelmed and stressed, children immediately pick up on that. That can greatly influence how they're coping. So if there's a caregiver or parent who needs extra support, whether it's through family, friends, a therapist, taking breaks, doing things for themselves, that is probably the most critical thing that they can do to help their child.
And besides the media, we have social medias, and
Right.
our kids are on top of social media all the time. So I think with this generation, I'm more worried about the social media than the media,
Right.
because they're
Yeah.
all the time on their phones. And social media, I mean, we know the media is very, they don't inform what they need to inform all the time. They're the misinformation, and social media is even worse. But talking about safety and for the kids to feel safe in an environment, not only on mental health issues, but also, the safety around them in the building, the safety around them with the law enforcement, or what is the measurement that the school are taking. I want to bring Aristides Gonzalez. He's the CEO of Safe Choice for Kids. He is not only expert in security, national but international also. You've been following this, Aristides, since day one when the tragedy started. We've been talking about this. Tell me, what is your thoughts after a week of watching the timeline of the press conference that the law enforcement are giving us, what happening from the moment that they got the 911 calls, and I was also reading about then a specific construction that this school has that is very open, and everybody was talking about that that's not a typical school. So give us your thoughts in security manners. I don't know if he's probably he's still there. Aristides, I don't know if you can hear us, or he got freeze maybe. Okay, maybe you can rejoin us. Okay, let's go with Orlando, and I want Orlando and John talking about, you guys are in political career. What we need to be done in and I don't know, any law that we need to enforce. We've been hearing about Governor Greg Abbott talking about that they need to have different committees and start talking about addressing the issue as we speak.
Is that a question for me or John?
John and you, I mean, both of you. I want Mark to put both of you to talk about this.
Well, let me lead off and give John an opportunity to think about it. First of all, I think the most ineffective organization to control a sick society is government. That's
Mm.
just my opinion. Years and years ago, as you know, in the 20s, we had submachine guns and gangs and you know, back in those days, and bootleggers would go into restaurants in Chicago or New York, you know, where the mafia was, and shoot everybody up with machine guns. So government outdid machine guns for the general public. We can no longer purchase machine guns, and you know, but all we've seen this before, and there's not much government can do. Later, government decided they were going to pass what's called safe school zones, where you were within a certain distance carrying a firearm near a school. That's a felony and a federal offense. That didn't work, and so now everybody wants more gun control. Okay, so now you pass legislation on gun control. Who's going to turn in their firearms are law abiding citizens, not the mentally sick, not the
Mm.
gang members, not the thugs, not the criminals. We've seen this in other countries. For example, in Mexico, firearms are outlawed. You cannot own a firearm. But who's heavily armed in Mexico are the drug cartels, the human smugglers, the criminal element. So, the most ineffective, in my opinion, organization to handle this issue is government. Now,
Mm.
government can help because there are some trends here, and I'm not a professional, but they're usually males, they're usually teenagers, they're usually very frustrated. I think they usually come from single parent, if not, you know, broken homes. And so the focus should be on mental health. This is a recent trend. You know, I remember near the Luby shooting near Waco, Texas, many, many, many years ago. Andrea, I don't even know if you were born. It was one of the first mass shootings in it with a semi-automatic at a public place. But whether it's a school, whether it's a post office, whether it's a Walmart in El Paso, whether it's you know, the children in Uvalde, Sandy Hook, or Santa Fe, this is an indication of a sick society.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so we've got to dedicate resources to identifying those. And I know it's a tough task, but make mental health resources available for anyone that suspects that someone may need help. And we all know there are people that you look at in your family, or you may know that, you know, they're not right. They need some help. They've got some issues. And so I think dedicating uh, you know, resources to mental health is important. And
Mm.
again, but you know, the media jumps in and they want gun control. You know, Beto, Robert Francis O'Rourke takes the opportunity, tragically made the choice
Yeah.
to interject politics into
That
the
was
event.
terrible.
I thought that was one of the most unfortunate, unprofessional, unethical performances I've seen by a politician in my life. And you know, I'll be 65 this year, and I've never seen such a despicable act. But again,
Mm.
it's an indication of a sick society, and we've got to figure measures out how to start to address those illnesses.
John.
Yeah, Orlando, I'm gonna agree 100% with you. Mr. O'Rourke was ridiculous on that. And you're right. We've got to be careful because a lot of times you end up punishing good people on something like this. You pass laws that's going to affect law-abiding citizens, and we need to stand up for the law-abiding citizens. You know, as a legislature, let's look at. I mean, passing more gun laws. I don't even. Do we enforce the gun laws that are in effect right now? Are we making those steps? Those things need to be looked at. Mental health is the biggest issue. There was red flags all over the place with this individual. What are we doing on to address those type of things? And then the other thing that I think would be important is hardening of the schools. And a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, I think is kind of premature because I'd like to see the complete report. You know, how did he get in? We heard the door was ajar. We heard it was not ajar. Uh, you know, those kind of things, hardening the school is going to be very, very important. In fact, I'm actually going to my schools now. I went to the high school yesterday to give some awards to some teachers and students for some achievements they had done. And I went and tried to get into school without going through anything else, and it was pretty locked down. And of course, now it is because we had this. But I think if, as parents, we can all work together and say, hey, we need to harden the schools. I don't want somebody just walking in. I have 5 boys, and I've got one left in high school and 2 in college. The other 2 already completed. But as a dad, I care about the safety of the kids. So I think looking at it a holistic view and not just focusing in, oh, this is a gun issue, period. That's not the case. I mean, let's do what we can on the mental health side. Let's do on the enforcement side, hardening of the schools, and then you got to also get into proper training for the schools and for the police departments. I think we can look at all of those things together. Are going to make some improvements.
John, do you think we need to dedicate more budget in the schools to secure the schools, to make it more like I don't know, like a fort, like something more secure for the kids, and also, as you say, training, and not allow just anybody to get in, like, to be more careful when it comes to somebody to coming into the schools. Do we need to allocate more budget for that?
Yeah, and my fear is we need to have budget, but we need common sense approaches to it, right? Just in the I told you about yesterday at the high school. I'll share a funny story. I go into my high school, and I'm a state rep, and they know me. And this one lady just tells me I can't open your door, representative, because I got to make sure that they have to let you in. They have to do the buzzer, and she kind of knows me. And then one student went out, and another student comes in, and the same thing happened with them. They already know that student, and it's all kind of playing games and stuff like that. But I do believe that every school should have a trained or an established policy of how do you get in and out of the school, and no leaving doors ajar. Teachers have to be vigilant. I know I've heard stories where the teachers go out on a smoke break at this part, or they'll go do, they run to their car for here, they'll leave the doors open. We just got to be more vigilant on that. My fear is that you go way far the other way, right? And then you get bars, and this ends up the school's like a prison. We don't want that. So it's
Yeah.
got to be common sense approach to these things. And what the true answers are, I don't know. But I'm hoping that as we get going, we get cooler heads prevail, and we start putting in the policies that are going to make a difference.
It's not an easy issue anyway,
Mm-mm.
and we're gonna talk about back to mental health with the doctor. Um, you know that mental health. We talk about, yeah, mental health. If somebody needs help, just find the help. But those things cost money. Therapy costs money. Trying to find a mental health doctor or therapist is cost money. Not everybody know where to get the resource. And we have also the Hispanic community. Many parents don't even speak English. And so this is another issue. How do we gonna try to address this and find a solution, doctor?
That's a great question. I absolutely agree with you that mental health costs money and that we do need more assistance in that area. We need more bills put forward that would support more mental health. I would say that the least expensive way to do that is to help us to identify these kids as quickly and early as possible. So, one of the programs that we're working on is called the Handle with Care program. This is when, if a child is exposed to any traumatic event and a police is at the scene of a crime and sees that child, so for example, a homicide, a suicide, domestic violence, that police officer has a streamlined way to alert the child's school to say, this is a Handle with Care child. So they've witnessed something that can be traumatic. And the school is then trained, the teacher is trained to look out for signs and symptoms that this child may need help. And if they notice those signs, they are then referred immediately for counseling. The reason I think this is so critically important in this context is because, as we mentioned earlier, many of the individuals who become perpetrators of mass shootings had early childhood traumas. They were either abused or neglected or actually witnessed a sudden death of a loved one. And so if we can, and certainly that's not to say that all people who experience those things will go on to develop, significant mental health problems, but if we can identify these kids more quickly, that is a much easier way of handling it than trying to provide all the treatment we need on the back end after they've been suffering for years. So that's one potential solution. But I will also say in the aftermath of Santa Fe, and certainly now in the aftermath of the Uvalde shooting, there is a lot of confusion in the community about what resources are available. And that's something that we're actively trying to help with, to help people understand here's where you can go get services. We actually have a teletherapy service that can provide free services to any children or families who were directly impacted. We are partnering with the boots on the ground behavioral health providers in Uvalde to really supplement what they're doing. So if they are getting an influx of children and families, we can help to provide these free services via teletherapy, which can also be helpful for those families that are struggling with transportation or would like to have the therapy in the privacy of their own home. Similarly, we're partnering with another teletherapy company that has offered free services to the community for adults who've been impacted. And we know that not only are parents impacted significantly, but the first responders, the providers, those who were treating the kids in the hospital. So we're really trying to ramp up as many free services as possible in this more immediate aftermath, but we're going to need it over the long term, without a doubt. In fact, we literally just finished treatment with one child from Santa Fe 2 weeks ago. It can be an extremely long process for those kids who are directly impacted.
Well, one of the things I wanted to follow up on is it sounds like you've got great resources there and are doing a tremendous job with helping these kids and getting them back to normal. On the cultural side, to bring in the culture a little bit, what have you been seeing with through social media and how kids could get like this? Not the victims, but the shooters. And what's driving this? Because in a press conference a few days ago, Governor Abbott said that as long as Texas has been a state, 18-year-olds been able to buy rifles. But obviously, we are in a different situation now. So what are these influences and what could possibly be done?
Yeah, that's such a difficult question to answer. And, I think, as we all know, this is multifactorial. There are so many things that go into this. And we don't really know enough at this point about the perpetrator to really make an educated guess. But, what we can say is that some people are viewing these shootings as reframing it as violent suicide. So these are often individuals who are clinically depressed, violent, and have a lot of self-hate, and they're taking it out on the others around them. And so again, the earlier we can start to assess these kids, having large scale assessments when kids get into the schools to really assess for depression, suicide risk. These are things we can do preemptively to be able to hopefully prevent what just happened.
Okay, well, seems like we have Aristides Gonzalez back with us. Mark, can you confirm that? We have him. Okay, nice. So we were talking about, mental health. That's very important, but also safety. And we have Aristides Gonzalez. He's the CEO of Safe Choice for Kids. He's an expert on security, national and international. But the last 4 years, he has been working on developing board game for kids to learn. It's like I used to remember when I was a kid, we used to play Monopoly,
right?
And we were learning a lot of things in Monopoly.
Absolutely.
So this is pretty much what he designed. He designed a board game that the kids from 6 to 12 they can play and learn, because the best way to learn for kids is definitely playing, because stick in your head, and that's a way for them to find a safety place at the school, a safety place at the house, how to confront a stranger,
right,
and things like that. But before we get into the game, Aristides, I wanted you to talk about your thoughts and the security matters since Uvalde tragedy back in May 24.
Well, what I can say is that there was a lack of planning, procedures, protocols. When we talk about physical security, there are three key elements that need to be integrated. We're talking technology, Luego, then we have procedures protocol, and then training of the people. In this event, in this really sad event, so we can see the lack of procedures, protocols, and training.
Yeah, and so when we get to with your observations, I mean, where do we go from here? I want to get into the game. I think that'll be interesting. But what do we take out of what we've seen here and maybe Parkland and others on some possible remedies, some of the things we can do?
Excellent question. Actually, as a criminologist, I strongly believe in education. With education comes prevention. So it is no matter of if, it's a matter of when. Okay. A lot of people are looking the reasons outside. In my personal opinion, I think the reasons are inside, at home, lack of communication. So we need to create a better, to be better and more effective on education, educating families, people about crime prevention. When we talk about run, hide, fight, is after the fact, is what we're going to do at the moment of the active shooter. So we want to go farther. We want to start working before that. So what we can do before an active shooter become another crisis like the one that we're living now. There's a lot of
Aristides,
yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I have two kids in high school right now, and I always get the emails saying that, oh, we just finished our fire drill. So it is like fire drills are very common in schools, but you think schools need to implement something that different than fire drills, like for example these kind of things, how to hide, what is the best place to run, what is the strategy that school needs to implement from now on after this tragedy? I mean, I think they should have implemented a long time ago, but well, let's put it in this scenario after Uvalde tragedy.
Right. Sure thing. If you let me to, I would say that education of violence prevention should be mandatory. So there should be certain hours for the teachers just to teach, what is the prevention and what are the actions that need to be taken into consideration to prevent an active shooter like the one that we just are talking about. So we're talking about education. We see a lot of signs for the active shooter. They are changing the behavior. They isolate. They are victims of bullying. They start, they start buying guns, and we're missing that. So we need to be more careful. We need to be, and that's why I'm bringing this back. So education at home. So there's a lot of elements that can tell us that one individual, one kid could become the next active shooter in a school.
So let's talk about this board game. I found it pretty interesting, and you've been working on this for many years, of course, way before the Uvalde tragedy. And this is a great way for the kids to learn, but not only to learn for the kids, but for the parents also, because they can play with the kids. So tell us about this board game.
Well, I call it educational tools because this is an effective way to engage and motivate children through active learning. So provide them with the knowledge and skills to trust their instincts, refusal skills, and problem solving. So this is a good tool just to have for parents. First of all, just to make sure that kids put away for a little bit time the technology. Then for parents to have the opportunity to sit with their kids just to talk about this important subjects, which is safety and security. And most important is this is a tool for parents to see what are the strengths and weaknesses of the kids in front of when facing any risky situation. So the goal here is just to create tools for kids, again, just to be proactive mindset, just to know that there's a risky situation out there, and they need to detect them before it's too late.
I want the doctor to comment on this. I think this will be a great tool for therapy for kids and parents to also address this safety issue.
Yes, absolutely. I think it sounds wonderful. And I think, as we discussed earlier, part of what can really help children going back to school to feel less anxious, more comfortable, is feeling like they have the skills and the knowledge to protect themselves. So empowering them to make good decisions and to do things that can actually help to keep them safe. So I think the game that we're describing right now sounds like it could be a great tool.
I want your thoughts on John and Orlando on these, like these kind of tools in mental health with everything that we can help to provide to the kids. I know you said like government cannot do much, but they can help. So I want your thoughts on this.
Well, look,
Uh,
I mean, I'll just talk about the tragedies, other similar tragedies. I remember when 9/11 occurred, right? The terrorists that were on board the aircraft all accessed the cockpit, right? Now it's impossible to access a cockpit because the FAA decided that they were going to arm in a manner that cannot be disarmed the doors of a cockpit. You cannot get into a cockpit. I remember when one of the pilots in a Dutch airline slammed the aircraft into the side of a mountain because he wanted to do away with his life, unfortunately, the life of others. That was because the pilot decided to step out of the cockpit to go to the laboratory. That only left one person in the cockpit. And so Federal Aviation Administration came up with a rule. There must always be two people in the cockpit. So nowadays, when the pilot or the co pilot have to go to the lavatory, a flight attendant has to be in the cockpit so that if someone goes berserk, you at least have an opportunity to unlock the door. So, in those instances, the government has come up with rules that help those situations. But again, I want to get back to this is a cause of a sick society. You know, a society needs three things to be healthy. It needs individuals, citizens that have sound mind, body, and soul. And if without that three legged stool, society begins to fall apart. There's no question, and I'm not going to put political blame, that the nuclear family structure, whether it's because mom and dads are working because of economic situations,
We're losing Orlando.
the lack of access to health care, it is a failure of providing for sound mind, body, and soul in society. And so I think one of the things government can do, I mean, here's some simple things. As you guys can tell, I'm in Montana, and right behind me in those mountains are grizzly bears. Now, no one goes to those mountains without being prepared. One of the ways we prepare is to carry what we call bear spray. It is an awfully powerful spray that if you hit the bear in the face, it disables their vision, it burns them, and they just simply run away. I always think to myself, why can't teachers have bear spray in the? It shoots 40 feet. If you hit the person in the face, you incapacitate them. They don't have time to manage a firearm. They're completely incapacitated. Simple things. How about tasers? If you can get a taser on a person that gets into the school, and of course fortifying the school, as one of our guests said, using technology, better instruction for teachers on how to secure the site. But again, the media and government is going to want to go after law-abiding citizens to turn in their guns, to register themselves with the government so government can track you. That's not the answer. It hasn't worked on the war on drugs, and it's not going to work because, as we say in Texas and in Montana, them horses left the barn. There are 360 million people in America, and I think there's probably about 45 guns per person. So the
Right.
government's never going to be successful in confiscating firearms. It's a matter of a sick society, and we've got to figure out how to involve everybody. Mind, body, and soul. You need those three legs of the stool to have a safe society.
Okay. Now, John, your call to action. We're about to go off on the for the air. So, your call to action on this topic: how we can help as a society, as a community, in this tragedy right now, while everything we'll figure it out how we solve this situation or
Well, I think
prevent
I
at
think
least.
we've touched on several different topics, right? And so hitting it from all these different angles. But I think, man, mind, body, and soul, just like Orlando was saying, that's so typical. One of the things that we can do as a government is pretty much after the fact, right? How do we help? How do we get funds to the families that need them today and here in the near future, and make sure that we don't forget about them 3 weeks? These people got a lot of healing to do. I know that as a legislator right now, we're looking at at the VOCA, which is Victim of Crime Act. It's federal funding, but we're looking at bringing that down from the to the state level so that we can help the families in Uvalde for the long-term process. I mentioned earlier these families, they're kind of tired of all the media down there, and man,
Mm-hmm.
let us give us some space. Well, I guarantee you in another 2 or 3 weeks, everybody's going to be gone. The pain sets in, the heartache starts, the thoughts start happening, and that's when we're really going to need to set up for help. So, the government can't prevent these things, but the government can be assistance in getting the right funds for the healing process to begin. And then we can work once we get all the stats and everything in. We can start working on okay, what needs to be done to prevent future things. But I agree. Until we start getting our minds right about this, and still and we start getting, I'm a big advocate of fathers in the home and having that that leadership. We're not going to change. Society's going to get worse and worse. So we're going to have to tackle it from many different issues.
Yeah, and I want to jump in real quick because John said something that's very important, and I just mentioned that in most of these cases, Andrea and Bobby, again, I'm not a mental health expert, but I can tell you that in most of these cases, these children have not only, as the doctor said, have had a traumatic experience, they have low self-esteem, they have mental health issues, and in many cases, as we've seen, teen suicide, especially among males, is out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And but but it's again, we've got to have resources to address the mental health issues. And I know that we talk about it. I know that, for example, when I served in government in Harris County, Judge Ed Emmett was very concerned about mental health issues,
Hmm.
and but nothing has happened. And so yeah, government doesn't have the answers. Government, in many cases, will not prevent this. They can come in after the fact, do an assessment of what happened, what could be fortified. But society has a role in this, and John hit the nail on the head. Fathers are important. A male figure is important. Taking boys out hunting is important. Taking them fishing, if you don't hunt, take them fishing. Take them motorcycle riding. Take them hiking in these mountains. I know people want to trash the NRA. The NRA is evil. But there are many families that send their children to National Rifle Association training sessions so that know gun safety. It's not the gun that's the problem here; it's the society. And so, you know, men need to step up and be mentors to young men. I know that we have big brothers and big sisters, but I think corporate America can do more by organizing outings for kids and even making healthcare professionals available. The
Mm-hmm.
schools can do more. Government can make healthcare funds available, but they're never going to stop these types of activities. All that government is going to be able to do, if they succeed, is to confiscate weapons from law-abiding citizens, and that will not be a solution.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Thank
right.
you, Orlando. Thank you,
I
John.
don't need to run for
Now,
office. Run for office again, Orlando. Come on now.
No, I love
now
having you, John. Thank you.
we want to call the doctor and Aristides for the call to action. Let's hear from the doctor.
Well, I thought all of those were really great points. And I think, one take home message here is obviously if you see something, say something. With many of these incidents, kids who knew the perpetrator saw signs, saw that this is someone who could be dangerous, and for whatever reason didn't feel comfortable saying anything or didn't take that action step. So we really need to empower the kids to be able to talk about that and to tell someone. I also just want to say, especially given, the Uvalde community and everything they're going through, that sometimes it's hard for people to be vulnerable and to say, I need help, even in the aftermath of a situation like this. But one thing that we really tried to get across in the aftermath of Santa Fe is that post-traumatic stress is a normal response to an abnormal event. So it is perfectly normal to be experiencing symptoms of post-traumatic stress, like nightmares, like re-experiencing, like hypervigilance, being completely jumpy and nervous and on edge. And that requires treatment. And so we want people to feel comfortable coming forward to seek those services that are available to them.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for your time and for all the information that you gave us. Aristides, what is the call to action, and also how we can find this game if parents wants to get for their kids and for them?
Well, I see at this moment, I see the need for to be more proactive and less reactive. Also, education. So we need to make sure that families. So how could we support schools and law enforcement to get families engaged? I have been teaching and visiting a lot of schools, and one of the biggest issues that they have is parents are not getting involved in the prevention actions. Okay, so education to be more proactive, less reactive, and education. Regarding the educational tools, we are now in the process to we have to reorganize all our effort because this is a family business, and that's the reason why I retired from my other business. So we're still working on the actions. You have to make sure that we can provide, these tools to anyone. At the moment, we are just connecting with the schools, and we're providing schools with these tools.
Okay, Aristides, thank you so much for your time, Doctor, Orlando, and John. Thank you, and let's just become united to help everybody at this point, because I think not only Ubalde but the whole society needs a lot of help and to be united on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what a great show. I mean, the guests, it gives people a lot to think about, and especially, this whole approach that we need to take. And I believe it comes down to three things. It comes down to actual physical school safety, culture, and mental health. And unless you address all of those, which it doesn't seem like in the government side they want to, you're not going to solve the problem. And this is such a huge area that people need to get involved in and take efforts and protect our kids. It's our children out there. There's really a lot to do.
I know. Orlando, see you next week. Te vemos la próxima semana aquí en TLC Live. Bobby, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I'm more fun than Orlando.
Of course,
right? Yeah,
you're
exactly.
more fun than Orlando.
That's what I thought.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for watching us today. And of course, visit us at TexasLatinoConservatives.com, TexasLatinoConservatives.com. We always are posting not only information, but our list of events. Very soon, we're going to announce the Leadership Latino. Bobby, that you were asking when we're going to travel again.
Yeah, when are we going
back?
back?
Yeah, when we're going back to travel and help other people with our Leadership Latino program. So stay tuned. I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Remember, TexasLatinoConservatives.com. Become a member. It's only $35 a year. Right. Help us to help. Nos vemos pronto. Chao, chao.